Hey everyone, David Chen here. Let's talk about The New Mutants, which is out right now on video on demand. And if you care about spoilers for The New Mutants, you should probably stop watching this video now because I'll probably give away some spoilers because I don't really care that much, and I'm guessing you probably don't either. The New Mutants kicks off with a character named Danny Moonstar, who is a Cheyenne Native American whose home is attacked by some kind of evil force, power, what have you. She wakes up in a strange hospital facility with 4 other kids who are mutants, and presumably Danny is a mutant as well. She doesn't know what her power is yet. But each of the 5 mutants have a sad backstory as well as their own individual powers. And they are overseen by Dr. Cecilia Reyes, who's played by Alice Braga in this film. During the course of the film, they must learn to get along, all while scary things start happening around the facility, and they need to figure out what's happening there. And that's basically the whole film. That's like the plot of the whole movie. So why don't I start with the things I liked about The New Mutants? I thought that all the actors are really talented. You got Maisie Williams, Anya Taylor-Joy, Charlie Heaton, Blue Hunt, and Henry Zaga, who are playing the 5 New Mutants. And I think their dynamic is really believable. The teen drama part of this actually kind of worked for me. Some people have described this as feeling like a pilot for a CW series, and I think that is, not necessarily an insult. It just kind of describes what we're seeing, which is, hey, these kids are kind of in high school, except it's a really low budget high school because there's only 5 kids and 1 employee, and also they have mutant powers. That's kind of the dynamic that's at play. And I think the actors do a pretty good job of selling it. So I like that part of it. I actually think some of the visuals are kind of interesting. Some of the visual ideas are creative. The way some of the powers manifest themselves is kind of cool. And the other thing I want to mention about The New Mutants is it's kind of a slow burn psychological horror film. And that's not really something we've generally seen when you have a movie with superheroes or mutants or whatever you want to call them in it. And I appreciate and applaud that writer-director Josh Boone tried to do something different with this genre. At this point, we've seen so many Marvel films, so many origin stories of superheroes, so many X-Men films. And this movie is very, very different, for good or ill, from all those movies because it tries to be very small and contained rather than a bunch of guys converging onto some major metropolitan area to stop a blue beam from going into a sky. It's very much about the dynamic between these characters, them figuring out each other's weaknesses or strengths, whether or not they can get along. And I appreciate how small the movie is, and I think that I'm the kind of person that wants to see superhero movies be all different genres. I want to see a superhero heist movie. I want to see a superhero mumblecore movie. I want to see, a superhero rom-com. I think there's just so much potential for this genre, and it's nice to see something like that manifest in a film like The New Mutants. All that said, it's not a great film. It's pretty boring and listless. There's very little narrative momentum. And it feels very, very low budget, and low budget in a way that you feel as an audience member because it's just weirdly empty. If you were conceiving a facility for these kids, you wouldn't design it like this. It's so massive, and there's only 5 kids and 1 employee. It just makes absolutely no sense. It feels like the movie should have been even smaller than it was. And maybe the production designer or the director was like, hey, I like the feel of this large institution, and it just didn't quite match because everything feels strangely empty. A lot of the movie is spent looking into empty hallways and feeling how barren they are. And it just feels weird and kind of low rent and not necessarily in a way that's intended. So the movie is not exciting overall. And I think one of the other issues of the movie is, as I've mentioned, all the actors are very, very talented. I think they all have bright futures ahead of them. But I just fundamentally think that Danny Moonstar, the character, not the actor, is the least interesting character. And it's unfortunate that they made her the protagonist of the film because all the other characters seem to have stronger personalities and have more interesting backstories. And it's a shame that the movie kind of hangs on this one character and relies on this character to work, and I really don't think it does. Beyond those things, the release of the film has just been kind of weird for a variety of reasons. I mean, first of all, the movie was originally supposed to come out in April of 2018, so over 2 years ago. And it has been pushed back for various reasons. And in general, when a movie's pushed back, it's not a sign of confidence in the movie. Now, this movie has had everything happen to it. I mean, Disney acquired Fox. That pushed it back. Coronavirus pandemic happened. That pushed it back. But it is odd that this is a movie that feels adrift. You know, it doesn't belong to either the former X-Men universe, really. I mean, because that universe is kind of over at this point. Nor does it belong to the MCU. It's just going to become this weird cultural artifact of this time where these two studios kind of had different visions of what X-Men could be, and this one was kind of left in the middle and without a home. There's been other controversies around this film as well, like, for instance, the character of Sunspot, who's played by Henry Zaga in the film. Originally, the comics, he was a black character whose origin story centered around resistance of racism and things of that nature. And that was just all erased for the final film because the director really wasn't interested in it. And, you know, I understand you can't fit everything into a movie, but also it's not like they replaced Sunspot's backstory with something like way better. So that's unfortunate. And finally, when movies were starting to kind of reopen this summer, this was one of the films that led the charge of the reopening, and the director of the film said that he thinks you should see the movie on the big screen. And so it's kind of motivating people, trying to get people to go into theaters at a time when it wasn't clear that that was a safe thing to do. And so that really rubbed me the wrong way personally when it happened. So all this kind of controversy around the film, all this kind of mythology around the film, and at the end of the day, it's just kind of a mediocre psychological horror film set in the X-Men universe, you know, and that's it. It's weird. It's anticlimactic. It ends with a whimper and not a bang. That's what has happened with the X-Men universe. Is after all those movies and billions of dollars made, this is how that universe, that franchise, is going out, and so it's a little bit sad, a little unfortunate. You know, I think at one point in the future, Kevin Feige will probably bring the X-Men back into the MCU, but we have no idea when or if that's going to happen or how that's going to happen. So for now, this is it. And the main message of the movie is very much about how, like, getting mutant powers is an allegory for puberty and maturation. It's something we've seen before in X-Men films, but ultimately it is about how these kids and potentially we as people need to depend on each other for strength during changing, challenging times. And despite how controversial the movie has been in the past and the pushbacks and the delays and the fact that the movie isn't that good, I still appreciate that as a message, and I appreciate that the movie is different than most other superhero films. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the New Mutants. I didn't think it was great, but I didn't hate it. And for a movie that has been surrounded by all this weird stuff around it, I actually think that's an achievement. All right, folks, that's it for me. I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving holiday out there and that you're doing okay. I want to thank all of my patrons at patreon.com/Dave Chen for making possible this YouTube video, this YouTube channel, as well as my podcast, Culturally Relevant, where I interview cool people from the world of TV, film, society, and culture. Thank you all, patrons. Thanks you out there for watching this video. If you want to watch more, make sure you hit like or subscribe. Hit that bell icon to make sure you get notified whenever I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.